Good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Holmes. Thank you all for joining me for this live stream of my lecture recital, the culminating event of my doctoral work in voice here at Shenandoah Conservatory. It means so much to have you all join me today. First, I would like to thank my document advisor, Dr. Laurie McManus, as well as the members of my committee, my applied voice teacher, Dr. Byron Jones, Dr. Fotina Naumenko, and Mr. Michael Forrest. I would also like to thank my musical collaborators in person, Tianbo Guo on piano, and again, Dr. Byron Jones will be singing baritone. Via recording, we have Dr. Wei-Han Wu on the piano and tenor Kevin Durkin as well. I also very much appreciate Jimmy Smith and the tech crew at Shenandoah Conservatory for their assistance today with sound and live streaming. And last, but certainly not least, I would like to thank composer Lori Laitman, who I believe is watching today as well. Thank you for gifting us with your beautiful work, this gorgeous and meaningful music, and for being so generous in your correspondence with me as I have worked on this project. Today, I will be performing and discussing excerpts from Lori Laitman's opera, The Scarlet Letter, which is an adaptation of Nathaniel Hawthorne's classic novel of 1850. My focus centers around the leading character, Hester Prynne, and her relationship with the minister, Arthur Dimmesdale. I will examine some aspects of gender throughout the opera and share some insights about the opera's plot, text, and musical devices, while drawing some comparisons with Hawthorne as well. I would like to share a little background information to start us off. Lori Laitman is acknowledged as one of the most widely performed living American composers of art song. She is devoted to writing vocal music and describes herself stylistically as a melodist, meaning that the melody is always most important in her compositions and is her starting point always. Laitman's music is characterized by the use of text painting, colorful harmonies that often borrow from jazz and the modes, flexible and shifting tempo and meter, as well as a true partnership between the voice and the accompaniment. Laitman also frequently makes use of leitmotifs, which are recognizable melodic fragments that are associated with a character or an idea that recur throughout a piece of music. In recent years, Laitman has expanded her writing to larger scale vocal works, including The Scarlet Letter, which, since its professional premiere at Opera Colorado in 2016, has garnered critical acclaim and has been performed by collegiate and professional companies. Given Laitman's status as composer of art songs, there are numerous articles and dissertations which discuss the merits and the style characteristics of those art songs. However, there is very little scholarship on the larger form works. My hope today is not only to share with you this stunning music, but also to lay a little bit of groundwork for future scholarship on Lori Laitman and her operas. Lori Laitman has said in interviews that she chose The Scarlet Letter in part because of her admiration for the unconventional protagonist, Hester Prynne, and that she believes more strong female characters are needed in opera, which of course I certainly think is true. In an interview with the Washington Post in 2016, Laitman referred to Hester as, quote, a feminist icon, explaining, she was able to withstand the judgment of her harsh Puritan community and found a way to live her life and support her child without crumbling. She's such a pillar of strength. In writing for Hester, Laitman sought to reflect her nonconformity musically with material she describes as being, quote, characterized by very unique phrasing and harmonies. Hester Prynne has certainly been a major figure of interest in American culture, especially among feminists. Literary scholars have offered a wide range of interpretations of Hawthorne's novel and disagree about the extent to which it supports Hester as a feminist character, if at all. While, of course, we must place Hawthorne in context, as a white man living and writing in the 19th century. Nonetheless, many literary scholars writing from a feminist perspective maintain that Hawthorne's criticism of sexist and misogynist practices is weak at best, and that unconventional women are often silenced or punished in Hawthorne's writing. But, like many others, Hawthorne scholar Nina Boehm does see Hester as a feminist figure and views Hawthorne's later writing as pro-feminist for his time, of course. Boehm refers to two feminine types that Hawthorne often contrasted in his work: the fair one, an unrealistic masculine construction that conforms to the rules established by the patriarchy, and the dark one, a real woman who struggles against them and embodies creative energy such as Hester. Although Hawthorne did view differences between men and women as biologically essential and unchanging, he viewed women and their influence as caring and loving, and saw men as acting selfishly and coldly without womanly influence. Boehm points out that by the end of her life, Hester has transformed the meaning of the letter A, intended by the patriarchal authorities to signify her sinful act of adultery, into admirable or able. Interestingly, the transformation of the significance of the A worn by Hester later in her life is not mentioned in Laitman's opera. However, given widespread familiarity with Hawthorne's novel in contemporary American culture, it's possible that many audience members would already be familiar with this concept. But more importantly, Hester demonstrates these traits consistently throughout the opera for the audience to witness firsthand. As we witness Hester's struggles, we sympathize with her as a fully human character living through extraordinarily difficult circumstances. The opera opens with Puritan townspeople gathering to witness Hester's sentencing for the crime of adultery. They sing of their history and their religious philosophy, which is centered around one law. Hester ascends the scaffold, carrying her baby and wearing a hand-embroidered scarlet letter A over her heart. We immediately witness her strength of character and her selflessness as she refuses to succumb to pressure from Puritan authorities to name the baby's father. One of these authority figures is the minister Arthur Dimmesdale, who we later learn is himself the father of Hester's baby and her fellow adulterer. Unbeknownst to all, the crowd includes Hester's former husband, whom she had believed to be dead, and who has assumed the false name of Roger Chillingworth. Roger Chillingworth then visits Hester in her prison cell in Act 1, Scene 2, revealing his return as well as ill intent. Chillingworth presses Hester for the name of the father as he seeks revenge. Hester again refuses, but does agree, in part for her own safety, to keep his identity a secret. In a few minutes, I will sing the aria that follows this scene, Beyond All Price, which is Hester's lullaby to her baby Pearl. It is interesting to note that there is no analogous scene in the novel. The occurrence of the lullaby is an added element. As with any lullaby, Hester's intention as she sings is to soothe her baby Pearl. However, Pearl is already asleep. Chillingworth refers to Pearl as Hester's sleeping child earlier in the scene. So then, the lullaby's truer purpose and power may lie in its effects on Hester herself. You are my pearl beyond all price. Sleep on, my love, sleep on. More worthy than all sacrifice, sleep on, my pearl, sleep on. These lyrics, inspiring the title of the lullaby, suggest that Hester's suffering will be made worthwhile through motherhood. Librettist David Mason explains in the preface to the published libretto, entitled The Scarlet Libretto, that he chose a lullaby at the end of Act 1, Scene 2, in order to make it clear that Hester was now primarily devoted to her daughter Pearl. You will notice a clear shift in the musical environment during the introduction to the lullaby. As Hester pivots away from her role as ostracized woman to nurturing mother, she creates a safe haven for Pearl and for herself. The loud and dissonant music of the preceding scene is stripped away to a soft, gentle consonance centered in E flat. Harmonic motion is stabilized by the use of a pedal, and subtle harmonic shifts occur over top, allowing for color and expression while weakening dissonance and a more conventional sense of harmonic motion. The meter shifts often, and along with a pervasive rubato, creates a rocking effect. Immediately before the lullaby, Hester puts her hair up under a cap before she cradles her baby. Hester's hair is given significant attention as an outward manifestation of her womanhood in Hawthorne's novel. When she dons the scarlet letter and puts her hair up under her cap, Hester takes on the role of chaste and repenting mother martyr figure as she submits to the constraints of Puritan society. When Hester's hair is down, she's alive and fully present in the world as a sensual woman, but this part of Hester is hidden away for most of the story. Here, Hester is rewarded musically by taking up her motherly role with a transition to this peaceful musical environment. Hester's vocal line in this aria generally uses consonant intervals, contributing to a sense of stability and ease. Thirds, fourths, and stepwise motion dominate, coupled with frequent use of arpeggiation. You will also hear the use of dissonant or larger intervals to illustrate the text. For example, a diminished fifth on the word adultery alludes to Hester's sin and the external anxieties associated with it. Larger descending intervals are sometimes used to convey sadness. In contrast, large upward leaps in Hester's vocal line convey her optimistic heroism later in the aria. These moments of optimism occur as Hester visualizes the life that she wants for herself and Pearl, and she becomes increasingly strong and hopeful as she sings. Hester's statement, "Nothing will come to harm you, Pearl," is sung a total of 6 times in the second half of the aria. Musically, it is transformative for Hester, as it literally lifts Hester's melody and its tonal environment up a whole step by the end of the aria. And if the singer takes the higher melodic option at the end, the melody reaches its highest point as Hester sings one last sleep on to Pearl on a soft and floaty high C. Hester's focus on love and protection for Pearl has literally lifted her up. In the preceding scene with Roger Chillingworth, Hester states, "I would have died, but love gave me this sleeping child who is my life." In other words, Hester is saved from her pain through motherhood and her love for Pearl. Hester's "Pearl beyond all price" is deemed more worthy than all sacrifice. While motherhood certainly does fall within conventional gender roles, Hester's situation as an ostracized woman on her own is not conventional, especially within the Puritan society in which she is living. Furthermore, she's on her own, and no one but herself comes to her rescue. In this way, she demonstrates not only her capacity for love, but also tremendous strength and resilience. And now, Tianbo and I will perform Beyond All Price. story then skips ahead to 7 years later. Pearl is now a spirited child, and the Puritan leadership is wondering whether she should be taken away from Hester to find a more proper home. Hester begs them not to do it and pleads with Arthur Dimmesdale to make her case. He eventually persuades them to let Hester keep Pearl. In the next scene, Act 1, Scene 4, we find Chillingworth and Dimmesdale in their shared home. They have become friends and roommates over the course of the years. Dimmesdale's health is deteriorating, and Chillingworth has been his physician. However, he has continued his pursuit of revenge and is constantly trying to draw a confession out of Dimmesdale. Chillingworth departs, and Dimmesdale has a feverish nightmare. Seeking fresh air, he goes into town, where he encounters the town witch, Mistress Hibbins. She taunts him with her aria, "Come to the Devil's Fire," and leaves him in agony and disoriented. Alone, he sings his first aria, "Our Nights," in which he remembers his love affair with Hester and shares his feelings of guilt for both his sin and his cowardice. Chillingworth eventually finds him and takes him home, and this concludes the first act. The next excerpt that we will be performing today is from Act 2, Scene 1, which takes place in the forest. Hester and Pearl depart for a walk, and they are intercepted by Chillingworth. Hester sends Pearl away to play. Chillingworth shares that he knows that Dimmesdale is Pearl's father, and he threatens to expose him. Hester tries to dissuade him from his vengeful plans, noting how his obsession has changed him. She resolves to reveal his identity to Dimmesdale. Here are some of Lori Laitman's thoughts on Roger Chillingworth. She says, "Chillingworth is driven by an obsession to discover the secret father of Hester's child. His music is permeated with a specific rhythm and melody that always circles around a few notes, revealing his obsessiveness. The encounter with Chillingworth motivates Hester's second aria, This Canopy of Trees. She wanders through the forest, at times alone and at times with Pearl. It is no coincidence that this aria takes place in the forest, in nature, away from the influence of Puritan society. We first hear the magical quality of the forest in the introduction to the aria, where there is again a distinct shift in orchestration from the scene preceding it. There is the use of the unusual and bell-like celesta, along with a triangle, and very light use of the strings and woodwinds. Coupled with the use of A-flat Dorian harmony in this section, the effect is somewhat otherworldly and hints at possibilities. Certainly, we see how Hester has suffered from the so-called civilized ways of the Puritan town, but there is freedom in the forest. Nature is a point of interest in both the novel and the opera. American Romanticism flourished in 1850, the publication year of the novel, and Hawthorne's contemporaries included the Transcendentalists, Henry David Thoreau, and Ralph Waldo Emerson. Hawthorne himself was interested in human perception of nature, and it certainly shows in the Scarlet Letter. The townspeople fear the forest, or any wilderness, because they associate it with darkness and what they call the dark man, which is a name used throughout Hawthorne's novel that is a symbol of evil. In the opera, they express their fears in the first act with statements such as, "Forest shadows crowd our homes," and "The devil lives in yonder woods." Additionally, the town witch, Mistress Hibbins, makes multiple references to satanic practices that take place in the forest at night. In contrast, light is associated with God and civilization, and the townspeople make proclamations such as, "Into the light of God we come," and "God's light on the town has shone." Arguably, I would say that nature tends to be associated with the feminine, as shown by the commonly used saying Mother Earth, while God, who may often be imagined as a white-haired old man in Western Christianity, and civilization both have masculine gender associations. Unlike the townspeople, Hester holds positive views of the forest and of nature, and she celebrates them during this aria. She refers to the forest fondly as "this canopy of trees," and she revels in the spots of sunlight on the earth. During this section, the orchestra depicts a gentle wind and swirling leaves centered in a pleasant D-flat major harmony. She acknowledges darkness as well and notes how the forest reflects the light and shadow of our lives. Hester's ability to appreciate nature stands in contrast with the Puritan townspeople who constantly are battling against it. Her perception that nature can encompass both light and darkness, joy and sorrow, makes her uncommonly wise. This canopy of trees is a journey through Hester's memories, thoughts, and emotions, each inhabiting their own melodic and harmonic landscape. Hester experiences anger, sorrow, and fear, as well as joy, love, and hope, and ultimately despair as she questions the purpose of her punishment. Laitman employs distinctly different music for Hester's various thoughts and emotions, frequently using leitmotifs to accomplish this task. I'd like to walk us through a few of these motifs. First, what is called the scaffold theme. It originates in Act 1, Scene 1, with Hester sentencing and recurs many times throughout the opera. It is an ominous, distinct rhythmic pattern paired with repeated pitches that step up and then step down again. It occurs in conjunction with fear, as well as with external threats, for example, the presence of Roger Chillingworth. Its many iterations occur at different pitch levels in conjunction with different harmonic colors, offering a wide range of accompanying emotions. Tianbo, would you mind playing that for us, please? Thank you. Next, we have what is labeled Pearl's imp theme, which is an energetic and somewhat disjunct motif that originally appears in Act 1, Scene 3. It occurs regularly throughout Act 2, Scene 1. The theme is bouncy and indicative of possible mischief. Would you play that one, please, Tianbo? Thank you. Pearl brings Hester both gaiety and tenderness, and along with the imp theme, we also hear reminiscences of Hester's lullaby to Pearl in the aria, recalling her motherly love. But as you will hear, even in these moments which recall the lullaby, we are continually reminded of the presence of the Scarlet Letter. Hester's difficult past and the sorrow associated with it also figure heavily into the aria. The next motif I'd like to talk about is the "You Cannot Change the Past" motif, which first appears in the introduction to the scene and recurs several times. Its arching melodic shape and minor tonality reflect Hester's sadness and longing. Tianbo? The sorrow motif is another expression of Hester's sadness. This one consists of descending seconds and is always stated in minor. It's a device that is used by many other composers as well. Simple, but effective. Do you mind playing this one too? The sorrow motif is later combined with the "You Cannot Change the Past" motif and transforms later into the end of sorrow motif, which is the last one I'd like to bring to your attention. The end of sorrow motif reflects a transformation in Hester's mindset as she turns her thoughts to her hopes of encountering Arthur Dimmesdale. We first hear the end of sorrow motif when she states, "Oh, may it be the end of sorrow." Thank you. The end of sorrow motif recurs many times throughout this aria as well as later in the opera. And now, without further delay, we will present the beginning of Act 2, Scene 1 with Roger Chillingworth and Hester, and then it will transition into this canopy of trees.
Hester Prynne, will you consent to speak? You look at me with hatred in your eyes.
Why must we suffer here? What must we prove? Those are radical questions for a woman who has spent 7 years bearing the punishment set upon her by the Puritan leadership and who has outwardly accepted her fate. But the Scarlet Letter has kept her separate from society and its ways of thinking, and Hester feels freedom in the forest. In Hawthorne's words, she had wandered without rule or guidance in a moral wilderness, as vast, as intricate and shadowy as the untamed forest. The tendency of her fate and fortunes had been to set her free. The Scarlet Letter was her passport into regions where other women dared not tread. Hester's actions and words show that her highest priority is love, and this is consistently at odds with the town and its leadership. This conflict, along with her unconventional character and strength, leads her to increasingly adopt nonconformity. While this idea originates in Hawthorne's novel, Laitman's opera seems to particularly endorse this line of thinking. Her instrumentation and use of modes characterize the forest as magical and the love within it as good and right. The transformation in Hester's thinking continues in our next musical excerpt, which has been pre-recorded. And it's again in the forest when Hester finally encounters the Reverend Arthur Dimmesdale. Although Hester freely questions Puritan society, Arthur Dimmesdale is completely ruled by it. On the surface, he represents complete hypocrisy, outwardly appearing as a pure and pious religious leader, while secretly equally as guilty as Hester of the sin of adultery. His awareness of the injustice of his position reveals a kind heart, but he spends most of the story unable to take action. As librettist David Mason says, quote, "Dimmesdale would be despicable if his agony didn't humanize him." Hawthorne's novel creates a complex portrait of Arthur. Hawthorne himself wrestled with his identity as the concept of masculinity evolved in the world around him. As a result, the novel can be said to explore masculinity just as much as femininity. Both of its main male characters are ultimately destroyed by an imbalance of self-control. Roger Chillingworth's excessive self-control leads to darkness, cruelty, and obsession, while Arthur Dimmesdale's lack of self-control leads to adultery, guilt, and inaction. Hawthorne's novel contains many pages revealing the inner thoughts of each man and portrays each of them rather sympathetically while conveying the tragedy of their circumstances. In my opinion, there is considerably less sympathy in Laitman's opera for Roger Chillingworth, who is portrayed for the most part as a villain. His music is mostly foreboding and menacing, as you heard. But the portrayal of Arthur Dimmesdale's character is similar to Hawthorne. We see his good intentions and his kind heart, but also his shortcomings and instability, which are on full display. As Laitman explains, Dimmesdale is paralyzed by fear and guilt and hides his true self for almost the entire opera. Thus, his music differs depending on the situation and his mental state. When he has a breakdown, the music becomes jumbled with themes mixing together. When Hester helps him become courageous, his phrases become more individualized and his harmonies lusher. This scene in the forest is Hester and Arthur's first time alone together in 7 years. Their romantic relationship is treated reverently from the first moment they see one another. At this moment, there are 2 ascending scale-like gestures that invoke a sense of peace and wonder found in the forest and links these qualities with their relationship. It is marked gentle with wonder and magical in the score. Tianbo, would you mind playing that for us again? Thank you. As they begin to speak, time seems to stand still. Not long into the scene, we hear the recurrence of the end of sorrow motif, a positive commentary on their relationship. Although Arthur leads the conversation with his words, his statements are harmonically open-ended, while Hester's statements align with harmonic resolutions, affirming her strength. As their conversation continues, we see a contrast between Arthur's pessimism and Hester's optimism. Arthur's vocal line frequently has a descending melodic contour and minor harmony. When he asks if Hester has found peace, he shares that he has had none. Here, his line is declamatory and lacks movement. Laitman uses an ascending vocal line in major harmony to convey hope and strength in Hester's response. She points out that there is some good in his situation, noting that the town loves him and that he does many good works. But Arthur seems to take no comfort. And his vocal line utilizes a descending melodic contour as he states, "You alone know who I am, and all these years you would not speak my name." Throughout the opera, Arthur demonstrates mixed feelings about Hester's refusal to name him, likely due to his guilt. In public, he praises Hester for keeping his secret. When he is alone, he expresses regret at not having confessed. So while he appreciates Hester's strength and generosity in one way, perhaps he wishes that she had named him so that he would not have to confess himself. The music as he continues in the scene suggests that he may be jealous of Hester's outwardly visible punishment. His words, "You who bear so openly our sin," are accompanied by another restatement of the scaffold theme. Would you play that for us, please? Thank you, Tianbo. As the scene continues, Hester then shares that she's concealed Roger Chillingworth's identity as her former husband. As she continues to explain what happened, throughout she keeps returning to the statement, "I was so young, I did not understand." The simple lilting melody calls to mind youth and innocence and stokes our sympathy for Hester. Could you play that melody for us, please? Thank you. After the third occurrence of these, "I was so young, I did not understand," the motive takes on new significance as it is followed by a statement of the opening theme. This foreboding theme signals to the audience at the beginning of the opera that we are in for a tragedy. Lori Laitman shared with me that she conceived of its melodic oscillation as a kind of text painting portraying the rockiness of the settler's sea voyage. It is also reminiscent of the often quoted Dies Irae, a medieval chant from the Requiem Mass that speaks to the day of biblical judgment, in which every person will have to answer for their sins, hoping to be saved by God's mercy. Here, as the theme is linked directly to Hester for the first time, we sense that maybe the tragedy of the opera is in Hester's suffering, brought about by the judgment of Puritan society for mistakes she made when she was a young and naive girl. Could you play the opening theme for us? At this point, Hester has a breakthrough and imagines another, truer life. Her words celebrate nature and question the law of men as she points out that there is more to the world than Puritan society and its fundamentalist thinking. Hester's vocal line throughout this section is lyrical and powerful, with frequent use of ascending scalar motion, and is accompanied by sweeping gestures in the orchestra. We are reminded, again, of her bravery and her tremendous capacity for love, as her realization has been prompted by her desire to help Arthur. He is not easily convinced, however, and has difficulty breaking with the fundamentalist Puritan mindset by which he is ruled. He reminds Hester, there is a law, there is one law. His interjection sparks a restatement of the one law theme in the orchestra, which is originally stated by the chorus in Act 1. This theme is associated with the absolutist thinking of the Puritans' religious fundamentalism. Could you play that one for us, please? Thank you. Hester continues making her case and suggests that Arthur could leave the town and start over. Finally convinced, he follows Hester's lead and he adds, "And Hester, so might you." Interestingly, this suggestion is a departure from Hawthorne's novel, in which Arthur does not make this suggestion. Instead, he says, There is not the strength or courage left me to venture into the wide, strange, difficult world alone. In the novel, it is then Hester who offers to accompany Arthur to a new destination since he lacks the courage to do it on his own. This difference results in the impression that Arthur has become braver due to Hester's influence, and the music here underscores this idea. Arthur's vocal line ascends and leads into a satisfying dominant 7 to tonic resolution. Hester's open-minded thinking and optimism has won the moment, and we arrive at the duet, Our Eden Here Is Love. The title of this duet has important implications for the opera's interpretation of the Scarlet Letter story. It is worth noting that this reference to Eden is not found within Hawthorne's novel here. A biblical reference, Eden represents a pure version of humankind in its most ideal state, innocent and free before original sin. That sin, of course, is disobedience to God's command to not to eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge, often interpreted as carnal knowledge, after which the stain of sin tarnishes all. Of course, comparisons to Eden have been made by many Hawthorne scholars. Nina Baim notes that traditionalists have argued that Hester is Dimmesdale's tempter, while others, herself included, have made the case that Dimmesdale is Hester's tempter. But here, the significance of Eden is completely transformed to mean something different. And the question of who tempted whom becomes irrelevant. Our Eden Here Is Love suggests that love, not obedience to religious law or remaining chaste, is humankind's natural, untarnished state, and that it is more powerful than sin. Laitman's musical setting and the text within this duet serve as an endorsement of Hester and Arthur's romantic relationship, as well as a celebration of love and nature. The duet features lush orchestration dominated by strings and winds, along with flowing lyrical melodies that are framed within major harmony. Hester continues to lead Arthur musically through the duet, as she had come to lead him previously in the scene up to this point, with her entrances nearly always coming first, and his statements often echoing what she has just said. As in Hester's lullaby, Laitman frequently uses the arpeggiation of stable triads within the melody to create a sense of stability and ease throughout the duet, portraying their love as gentle and simple. Their love is also portrayed as virtuous and powerful. The text states that love can overcome the past and bring about joy. Love is even granted powers traditionally given to religion. Arthur implies that it can wash away the stain of sin and points out that there are no secrets left to hold. Hester adds that there is nothing to lie about. There are also frequent occurrences of the end of sorrow motif throughout. After one of them, Hester lets down her hair and removes the scarlet letter, symbolic of her return as a woman available for romantic love. The duet represents nature as a safe haven that is linked to love itself and is full of references to nature as a place for love. Nature is made analogous to a bedroom as Hester and Arthur celebrate our bed the earth, our blanket sky. They also declare that they now have freedom under the ancient trees, clear as the flowing stream crossing the forest floor. Nature is closely linked to love here, and love is humankind's natural, unsullied state. We will now share with you the pre-recorded continuation of Act 2, Scene 1, including the duet, Our Eden Here Is Love, featuring Dr. Wei-Han Wu on the piano and tenor Kevin Durkin.
Hester, Hester Prynne, I dreamed I would find you here, and I've come from work among the heathen. And did they minister to you? No one can help me now. I would
The music in the duet is so positive and powerful that it almost seems that it could precede a happy ending. But reality sets in shortly after with the return of Pearl. As in the novel, Pearl refuses to come back to Hester when she is not wearing the scarlet letter. The Hester who is free of society's constraints and the weight of them is unfamiliar to Pearl. Eden is a lovely idea, but it is not reality. Hester puts up her hair and puts the scarlet letter back on. After Hester and Pearl depart, Arthur expresses doubt that he will have the strength to follow through with the plan they have made, to leave on a ship after Election Day. A happy ending is impossible, at least from Hester's point of view. In the final scene, Arthur's guilt overwhelms him and he confesses publicly, revealing a scarlet letter on his chest, and he immediately dies. But even if guilt had not led Dimmesdale's confession and led him to confess and die, Chillingworth would have spoiled Hester's plans to escape anyway, as he had apparently booked passage on the very ship on which Hester, Pearl, and Arthur were to leave. From Dimmesdale's point of view, the ending could be seen as a sort of moral victory. His suffering ends, and he outmaneuvers Chillingworth. He also demonstrates more traditionally manly behavior as he publicly owns his actions and responsibility to Hester and Pearl. Dimmesdale's last words center on his belief that he may at last have earned God's forgiveness. Of course, to see the events that transpire in this way is to take on the perspective of Dimmesdale only, and to set aside the implications for the female characters Hester and Pearl. Are his actions heroic and just, or short-sighted and selfish? Are they all of these things? In the final scene, Arthur asks Hester, "Is this not better, Hester Prynne, than our dreams in the forest?" To which she kindly replies, "I know not, Arthur." But in Hawthorne's novel, Hester is more explicit, stating, "Better? Yea, so we both may die, and little Pearl die with us." Arthur's final speech in the opera is more inclusive of Hester, and his outlook is somewhat more positive than in Hawthorne's novel. He treats Hester as a partner and equal while ascending the scaffold, saying, "Let us join hands and banish this lie." He proceeds to praise Hester as he confesses, and his confession focuses on the wrong that he has done to her and the community as he failed to be accountable for his actions. Finally, he seems to have more hope for salvation as he speaks his final words, "And now perhaps the peace that passeth understanding." After Arthur's death and confession, Hester and Pearl are left on the scaffold crying. In another departure from the novel, the opera does not share what happens to Hester and Pearl, but rather ends quickly after Arthur's death. This change is the result of a revision made in 2016. Originally, there was a brief epilogue which, as in the novel, revealed Pearl's and Hester's future. They leave for Europe, where Pearl grows up to be rich, married, and happy, and Hester eventually returns to New England to live out her days. Emphasizing the value of motherly love, Hester states, "She is the pearl beyond all price, the heiress of the secret heart, the dream of freedom realized, still practicing her mother's art. She is the reason I have lived." While the original ending likely provided more closure and additional reinforcement of the opera's value of love, the revised ending instead emphasizes the tragic nature of the story. Laitman concludes the opera with an instrumental and choral commentary that places the tragedy in the context of a larger picture of time and place. Of the revision, she says, "I felt this worked both musically and dramatically, and I think it made the piece stronger." Overall, the Scarlet Letter opera affirms Hester Prynne as a strong character and Arthur Dimmesdale as a sympathetic but weaker one. Laitman's adaptation of Hawthorne's novel values many aspects of Hester's character: her tremendous capacity for love, her devotion as a mother, her resilience, her open-minded thinking, and her wisdom supreme among them. Love itself is positioned as the highest state of being, as well as nature and the natural state of humankind. Despite the consequences of Hester and Arthur's adultery, their loving relationship is portrayed positively, and Hester's love for both Pearl and Arthur brings about strength, virtue, and joy in an otherwise difficult life. Unfortunately, the shortcomings of Dimmesdale and Chillingworth, along with the harsh and judgmental nature of Puritan society, result in a tragic outcome, which perhaps could only have been different in another time or place. And that concludes today's lecture recital. I'd like to thank you all again for joining me.